Hey guys, this is Red Pole Q here, and as it turns out, I'm in Shanghai, and you know who's in Shanghai? The man himself, Mr.
Kane Vast.
And so we are going to record at least one, and maybe we'll have another episode where we talk about some stuff. This episode is going to be your questions answered number 5. I think this is the 5th one where we just bang out a bunch of answers to questions, and probably the next podcast episode will also be with Kane Vast, since I'm here in Shanghai and we always have lots of cool stuff to talk about. Cool stuff. So let's get into the first question. And for those of you who don't know who Kane Vast is, he is our main man in China. Maybe you want to say something about yourself?
So, my name's Kane Vast, and I live in China. Beyond that, I've been here for like 10 years. I teach pickup here. I am Australian, and...
But don't hold that against him. He's still cool.
I basically know everything there is to know about China, and even some things that you shouldn't know. So that's me.
Or would rather not know.
Yeah, you could put it that way.
Let's see. If you want to enjoy your trip to China, you don't want to know. Anyway, let's get into the questions. All right, the first one I got is a bit of a long one, but here we go. When I find myself unable to approach women, which is all the time, I turn inwards and self-question. I ask myself, why am I so afraid of this? Why do I care so much that those people watching might judge me? The same goes for my other big hang-up, which is my age. I think, why do I care so much that I'm older than the girls I find attractive, especially as my current lover is much younger anyway, so what does it matter? And then I end up on an endless spiral of trying to work out why I'm so bothered about these things. So I guess what I need to ask is if you have any particular guidance for how to focus on the world and not what is going on inside my own head. Ben. All right, well, do you have some advice for our man Ben over here, who is apparently concerned about his age, but his sleeping with a woman who is significantly younger than him? He can't focus on those young titties right in the face.
So, I mean, the main thing is that he has particular beliefs about himself that he would feel better if he changed them. And most of your beliefs are either propped up or smashed down by evidence. So the ideal thing would be that he goes and gets a bunch more evidence that shows him that being old isn't a negative or a bad thing. Beyond that, there are particular mindsets he could apply that would help. So, I mean, if he went and talked to a bunch of girls about what it is that they like about older men, then that could give him particular mindsets he could apply to his situation, which would get him to go from seeing his age as some sort of disadvantage or problem to it being an advantage or something that's actually enabling him to do well with women. So, yeah, I mean, I think that's the biggest thing there. And if you're going to worry about your age, you should be doing it when you're like super old, like 70 or 80.
Yeah, we have plenty of guys that are in their 50s who are regularly sleeping with girls in their 20s, and it's not really a big deal. I was just talking about a young lady who was on a trip with a guy who was older than me. I don't know how old because I don't know the guy, but judging by the pictures, he's older than me. And I'm 40, so and the girl is like 21. So there you go. Now, so that's one way. One way is to basically fix your beliefs around those things. And so Kane has just given you a couple of ways that you can go about fixing your beliefs. The other way you go about doing it is sort of the way that you originally asked, which is how to change what you focus on. And in terms of changing what you focus on, you need to replace that with other things to focus on. So, you're talking about focusing on the world. How do you focus on the world, not what is going on inside your head? Well, pay attention. There was a book I read quite a while ago. It was very interesting. It was saying that when you're a kid, kids like stare at stuff. And the reason they stare at stuff is because they're looking at that thing. So if an airplane goes overhead, they're like just watching that airplane as it makes its way across the sky. But you fast forward 10 years, they look up and they go, oh, airplane. And that's it. They're not looking at the airplane that's actually right in front of them. They have a category of airplane in their mind. They look up and they see, oh, this fits the category, end of story. They don't really look at it. And so having that level of paying attention to what's going on in front of you and not just putting it into categories immediately is another way that you can be in the present and get out of your head. So that's my additional advice. Okay, why don't you hit up the next question?
This question starts with the word but, and I'm just going to ignore that and jump to the next word because it's more correct. When I get their phone number, they never reply to text or answer the phone. How do you fix that? Thanks, Andrew.
So I must have, when I copied this, I must have eliminated the majority of the whatever he wrote because it wasn't relevant. So I just started with that.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so but the basic question is, right, this guy gets phone numbers and the girls don't reply to his text and they don't answer the phone. Now, that there's not enough information to tell you exactly what your problem is, but we can talk about some of the general problems that tend to lead to that. So the first one is if you're not spending much time talking to the girls. So a lot of guys will just go up and they'll talk to the girl for 2 minutes. They'll say, hi, oh yeah, oh cool, oh what's your name? Oh nice to meet you. Give me your phone number. And then they get the phone number and they leave. And that is likely to lead to girls not replying because they don't know you. You're a stranger who has their phone number. And, very commonly in that context, they'll give you their phone number because that's a convenient way to end the interaction. So they just give you their phone number with no intention of ever replying or talking to you. So that's the first thing, is running your interactions for longer. That's the first thing I would recommend doing.
So the thing I'm going to bring up here is pretty straightforward. You're either boring or strange or a combination of both. And you just got to stop doing that. Whatever it is you're doing that makes you boring or not doing that makes you strange, just cut that shit out, right? So being boring means you just talk to the girl about stuff that is not stimulating emotionally in any way. And if that's hard for you to pick up, then just think of every conversation you've had with people who just made you want to shoot yourself in the face. Generally, it's them asking you questions which aren't interesting or surprising or engaging, and they're not saying anything that makes you think something about them that is stimulating.
Or makes you think anything stimulating at all.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be just about them, right?
Sure. So being boring is an art form that I think many guys have perfected to a very amazing level. And the easiest way to solve that is to go and learn some basic humor and how humor works. There's lots of ways you can do this. The laziest way you could do it is go on YouTube and look up various YouTube channels that deal with this stuff. One of the really easy ones where you could learn some conversational stuff that would help would be Charisma on Command. You could go and look at our infield videos and see how we're being funny with girls. There's lots of different ways that you could deal with this problem. But the main thing is, if girls
you could go to improv classes. That's a good one. Improv comedy classes.
So the less lazy option is you leave the house and you go and do stuff that involves you learning things. And you can certainly do that. Improv being one example. Acting classes aren't bad. Anything that gets you in a group of people where you're having to figure out how to talk to them more effectively. So there's lots of different ways you can do that.
Yeah, some people do Toastmasters. Not as, not going to help you on the humor side all that strongly, but it will help you with good delivery and presence and body posture and voice tonality and that sort of thing.
Yeah, and you figure out pretty quickly when you're holding attention or not, right? So with being boring, it never works. And the crux of being boring for a lot of people is that they're just afraid to take risks. So when they're talking to girls, the things they're saying and doing are just so under the radar and lame that there's nothing engaging there. And to be engaging, you generally have to say take some level of risk in interacting with people. You know that risk doesn't have to be very much, but jokes can be misinterpreted. So you do have to take some level of risk.
Or they can just not be funny. On the course of this discussion so far, I've interjected with various hopefully humorous things, and I don't know if they're funny to you guys. Sometimes they're not as funny to me when I say them as I think they're going to be when I think of them in my head. But that's the risk you take. You just say it, and people laugh. Now, most people, what they do is, they're with their friends or something like that, so they feel very comfortable taking those risks. And so when they meet a girl, they don't feel comfortable taking those risks, so they become even more boring than they would normally be.
Yeah, so as Red Book you just mentioned, if you can be funny with your friends, well, you just want to try to apply the same mindset and behavior when you are with girls. And for a lot of people, this can be a bit of a struggle. And the main part there is that their mindset is different. They think that they have to do something in a particular way to impress girls, or that they can't do certain things, or they're going to get in trouble or upset the girl in some way. And all of that just gets in the way of being fun and funny. Now, the second thing about being strange, I'm not an expert on this because I am, of course, a totally normal person, but being strange generally seems to be...
Chokey.
I don't know what he means. Being strange is generally when you are behaving in a way that is outside what they would expect to be normal, okay social behavior, and you're behaving in a manner that they can't interpret. So, for example, if you walked along the street and every girl that walked past you, you told them that their shoes looked cool, generally they're going to understand what you're doing because it's quite straightforward, right? But if you change that and you went up to every girl and you asked them, are your shoes cool? And then you just stared at them, a lot more girls would look at you and just be very confused because they can't interpret your behavior accurately, as in, what does this mean? What are you doing? What is your intention? So I don't know if you are an extremely strange person, or if you're normal and just boring, or what the thing is, because we don't have enough detail. But I will say that being strange and boring are the two biggest issues for girls. And girls meet, attractive-ish to very attractive girls meet a lot of guys. So they have a pretty solid radar for if people are normal or not normal, funny or not funny, right? So if you find this to be a consistent problem, then as Red Poku said, it could be a time issue where you haven't talked to them enough for them to feel comfortable about continuing to talk to you. It could be that you're boring or strange.
On the strange front, I just want to mention that if you are nervous or anxious when you're talking to girls, then that can make the girls nervous and anxious. And I'm not saying that you can't be nervous or anxious, but what I'm saying is that you have to tone down your nervous and anxious body language and voice tonality and all those things. Because if you're nervous, then it makes the girl often feel that there's a reason to be nervous. And so that makes them nervous too. So you want to, as much as possible, seem calm and relaxed when you're interacting with the ladies.
Yeah, so if you are still having major issues in this regard or want further questions, feel free to hit us up and talk to us directly.
There you go. Okay, great. Let's move on to the next question, which I will read out. How can I get women to come to me instead of me coming to them? What qualities in a man, physical and or personal, are attractive to a lot of women? I am particularly interested in getting dates with Asian women, such as Chinese or Korean. However, I am not in China or Korea. Maybe I can find Chinese women or Korean women since I live close to Chicago. Maybe I can get Chinese or Korean dates online. I would like you to answer these 2 questions for me so that I have a better idea of what I should say or how I should present myself to be attractive. Quite frankly, I don't know whether or not I'm attractive to women. I haven't heard women tell me that I'm handsome or attractive throughout my life. I'm tall and can send you a headshot photo of myself if you would like to see what I look like. I haven't dated Asian girls before. My biggest frustration would be having that desire but not knowing how to make an approach and get the result I'm looking for. By making an approach, I mean either online or in person. The biggest challenge for me when it comes to finding and dating the Asian girl of my dreams would have to be communication skills. I don't think my interpersonal communication skills are good. I don't think I'm good at talking about myself either. I also get a little nervous when thinking about waking up to find a woman I am attractive. I think he means waking up and the idea of going out into the world to find a woman who's attractive. Okay, so let me repeat the questions one at a time. The first one, how can I get women to come to me instead of me coming to them?
That's really easy. Just move to Thailand. You won't be happy, but they'll come to you.
Hey, don't forget about the Philippines.
Don't move to the Philippines. It's even worse than Thailand.
Guys think that the girls there have better bodies.
It's because they have bad eyesight because they're 60.
So what I'm going to say is that there is a more practical way to get women to come to you, and that is to select women that are way, way, way below what you could get. If you do that, the women will come to you. Unfortunately, this has been well tested by me more times than I care to admit to. But if you go for women where your value is obviously way better than theirs, then they will come to you. Now that doesn't mean they're going to approach you, although that can happen if you are super attractive. But more typically, what that means is that once you've made that initial approach and probably reached out to them, sent them the first message or sent them the first phone or called them first. Then after that, then they have enough of an indicator that you're genuinely interested that they'll start putting in a lot of effort. But this isn't really recommended. This is how, guys with handsome young guys with a lot of money end up with, trash fat girls. So if you don't want to do that, then I don't recommend going that low. But that is option number. That definitely works for getting women to chase you.
On a serious note, though, you're not going to be happy with the sort of girls who are going to chase you or approach you themselves unless you are really like apex predator level looks. So unless you really are like 9 out of 10 in terms of looks, you're generally not going to get really great looking girls coming after you because they have a lot of choice of guys who are similar to your level. And the reason for this is if you think how many times in a year do you see a girl that looks to be like a 9 or a 10 in looks, right? It's not like an everyday or even an every week thing. It's actually quite rare. Whereas you see lots of girls that are like 4s, 5s, 6s, 7s. So because of that, it's the same thing in reverse. Girls see lots of guys who are somewhere between the value level of about a 4 and about a 7. And that means if you're in that value level, you can't really rely on that to be a reliable way for them to come and approach you and try and make things happen with you. So you can either up your value in particular areas, meaning your appearance, also your status, right? Be that your reputation in that community or the amount of money you have, or you join a particular social group and you climb to the top of the hierarchy within that social group. There are a bunch of tweaks that you can do to somewhat improve the situation. However, I think the biggest issue you're going to have if you're going to try with your current perspective or view is your location. Being a guy of some sort that isn't like a local Asian dude in America doesn't put you at any sort of advantage with Asian women because there are a lot of white guys, black guys, and other ABC or just
ABC is American-born Chinese, for those of you who don't know.
yeah, there's lots of access to these sorts of guys. So unless you're quite exceptional, why would they bother with you, right? Whereas if you did move to somewhere in Asia, then of course the odds are more in your favor because there are less of what I'm assuming to be your type of person. So you then generally seem to have some sort of higher value, which enables you to attract the girls more easily.
Okay, now the other thing that I wanted to say is that that for guys, when they're looking at women, what they see is the most important factor in terms of their interest in pursuing her. Whereas with women, that's not the case. So your looks alone don't do very much for you. Women don't care that much about looks. I mean, yes, they want to be with hot guys, but other factors are far more important. So until they know you, they know your personality, they interact with you, they aren't generally going to be interested. So yes, there's like in the same way that Kane was just talking about. Yeah, there are some guys out there that are 9s or 10s, and girls are all over them. But you can even think about the case of a rock star. Yeah, rock stars can sleep with lots of women, but rock star groupies in general are not known for being the hottest girls out there. It's not like you get groupies and it's a bunch of Victoria's Secret models who come, here, come backstage with me. And the Victoria's Secret model is like, sure. It doesn't work like that. So, when it comes to these really attractive women, even guys who are high status with a lot of value need to do at least a little bit of legwork. Now, yeah, it's probably easy for them to get a date with these girls if they, ask or whatever. But you should understand that girls are looking for other traits, and those traits can only be displayed by them actually interacting with you. So that's a big part of why the guys have to put in more effort than the girls in the dating world most of the time, and why the only girls who do chase are girls who your value is obviously significantly higher than theirs, and the girl has to have a pretty high level of confidence or be crazy. And I say she has to have a high level of confidence because she thinks that she deserves guys that basically are out of her league, or she's crazy, meaning that she just wants to bang whatever the hottest guy is she can find without worrying about the long-term potential of that relationship. Not to say that this isn't very common in America, judging by all of the out-of-wedlock pregnancies, but hey, probably it's just a cultural thing. Okay. Okay, I think that'll do for that question, I think. All right, your turn. Here's the next question.
The biggest frustration with Asian girls is that they are generally shy and not open, except for some Chinese girls who have already had bad experiences in their personal lives. How to approach them and capture attention is the biggest problem. Please reply with your solutions, as I would like to date and make love with many beautiful Asian girls of different nationalities. Can you share your contact mobile and telephone numbers? Vinay, who I imagine is in Chennai, India.
Yeah, Vinay from Chennai, India. Okay, so, all right, so I'm not going to share my contact mobile and telephone numbers with you, so sorry about that. But, or what is it? Sorry, not sorry. I think that's what you're supposed to say there. Okay. Now, this whole thing about Asian girls being shy, it's funny because Kane and I were just talking about this earlier today. This is this misconception that people have about what Asian girls are like. And I love this part about except for some Chinese girls who already have bad experience in their personal lives. When I heard that, I just thought of like, like the girl when you like, oh, it reminded me of the time that when we were in Korea and you were doing the advanced approaching boot camp and and you had them doing the hug.
Oh,
And then the girl came up and she's like, "You can't do that. You can't hug people you just met." And I was like, "Oh yeah, that's what you made me think of when you said the one who's had bad experiences and they're not shy."
So she was saying Korean people don't do this,
Yeah.
and then I like pointed to Joe and that, and I was like, "Well, obviously they do because they were doing it like right there."
Yeah, yeah. So this thing about Asian girls being shy is just totally not correct. Are Asian girls less likely to throw their personality in your face in an annoying way? Yes. Does that mean they're shy? No. So the way it works is that certainly in Western culture or in many cultures, it's common for girls or for people to interact with strangers for no reason. Certainly that happens in the States. Whenever I go back home, I'm doing normal things and some person starts talking to me and I don't know why they're talking to me because I'm busy doing something that doesn't have anything to do with them. And then, I have to be sort of polite and friendly to them, even though I think they're annoying and probably fat.
Or annoyingly fat.
No disrespect to our fat listeners out there, but all I'm gonna say is if you're a guy and you're fat, then you should stop being fat, and that'll really help. And if you're a girl and you're fat, you should stop being fat, and that'll really help. So that's all I have to say about that. Now, so it's not that Asian girls are shy per se. It's just that they don't feel like interacting with random strangers is really very important to do. So unlike and I'd like to add something on. This is kind of my own kind of armchair philosophy sort of ramble, but you're listening to this, so you get my armchair ramble. In the West in particular, we had the humanist movement, and the humanist movement basically said, oh, all people are created equal. We all have equal rights in society, and and everyone deserves, everyone has human dignity, and and all of this. And so because of that, we have the belief, or in the French Revolution, what is it? Égalité, fraternité, liberté, something like that. So, that's kind of a Western ethos, and in Asia they definitely don't have that. They don't think all people are equal. They don't, not in any way, shape, or form think that. It has the Confucian hierarchical system, and so if you don't fit into the Confucian hierarchical system, and I won't go into it here, all you need to know is that if you're a stranger, then you're not in the system. And if you're a stranger, then basically you're about as important as, let's say, a cockroach. I'm exaggerating here, but not by much. And when I say that, and this is one of the reasons also why, unlike in the West, so in the States especially, people love to do this. This guy's super rich and he likes to wear ripped up old jeans and drive a beat up car because he wants to be just like everybody else. In Asia, they're like, that's just dumb. Why would you do that? If you have all that money, you should have nice stuff. It's like that's what the money's for. And so in Asia, typically speaking, how you look is a pretty close approximation of what your background is, because everyone's trying to be the best, essentially. So, if you can afford to drive a BMW, then you should drive a BMW and you shouldn't drive a Camry, because why would you do that? That doesn't make any sense. A BMW is better, drive a BMW. End of story. So when you approach in Asia, generally speaking, people are used to evaluating other people. Well, first of all, you're a stranger, so they can eliminate you, just period. Now, as a foreigner in general, Asians will give you a little bit more leeway because, you could be a tourist, you could be lost. They don't want you to think ill things of their country. So they might be more friendly than maybe they would be to a local person in the beginning. However, it's more because of that than it is. And so they may be friendly in the beginning, but they won't then engage you in conversation because you're a stranger. So they don't have a script for how to interact with you. They don't go, oh, it's a stranger, I should ask them how they are and where they're from and all this stuff. That's not, they learn that in English school, but they don't ever actually do that because that's not something that's done. It's not like they're walking around at the supermarket in Shanghai and they reach for the same yogurt as another Chinese person and they go, oh, haha, you were going to get that yogurt? I was going to get that yogurt too. Oh, so where are you from? That does not happen. Especially in China, if anything, they'll probably start fighting.
Almost definitely.
So they just don't have that as a normal mode of interaction with strangers. So it's not shyness, it's just that that's not something that's generally done.
So beyond any of that, I mean, if they're shy, it's probably because you're being weird, or that they've just never talked to a foreign person before, and then again, by definition, you're being weird, even though it's not actually your behavior. So that's a weird situation for lots of people in Asia, right? If you went to America and you go and talk to pretty much anybody and you say, hey, have you talked to an Asian before? They're going to be like, yeah, I have, because it's just a normal thing. Now, yeah, there could be some exceptions if you go to the deep south into redneck territory, maybe not, right? But generally, we have a pretty high level of exposure to people from different cultures with different languages in the West. And in Asia, and let's say China specifically, a lot of people haven't talked to foreigners before, or if they have, it's been in some highly structured, rigid social context, like that person was their English teacher, so they had a defined set of behaviors or defined way to interact with that person. And that means that the amount of anxiety and stress that they would feel about talking with a foreigner compared to your own makes a big difference in how they behave with you. So whether they're shy or not, I mean, that doesn't really matter. What really matters is how you deal with their shyness or their anxiety in that situation. And the most awesome thing you should do is always tell them that their English is really good. And tell them that 3 or 4 times, and they'll disagree with you. And then point out some reason as to why it's good. Let's say you tell them that their accent is very clear and you understand what they say. That will help lower their anxiety and their shyness quite a lot, because then they don't have such a high level of performance anxiety in terms of using the language that they lazily studied and forgot most of since they left school because their life doesn't require them to use it, right? So that's all I've got to say on that topic for the moment.
Okay, great. And great. All right, well, let's move on to the next question. I think it's my turn to ask. How to figure out what kind of girls I want in my life. I don't know who this is from. They didn't leave a name. So, what do you have to say about that?
How to figure out what kind of girls I want in my life. Well, the best thing you can do is come and do a boot camp, and then we have an exercise called the Perfect Girl Desire Statement that will deal with this. If you're not going to do that just yet, and you want to figure out some other way, well, I think the best thing you can do is try to date a bunch of girls. And with each girl that you're spending time with, try and come up with a list of the qualities that you like and dislike about them. And then the more girls you date, the more girls you can go, oh, okay, well, I like this quality, I dislike that quality, I want to be with this girl, I don't want to be with that girl. Because it's mainly about trial and error. Now, some people are pretty good at theorizing this, but for a lot of people, it just has to be down to experience. And the really defining factor is that the more experiences you have, the more things you realize you could have or not have with girls. And that's a really big deal, because if you are meeting girls and let's say they're mostly pretty similar, then you're used to getting a certain sort of behavior and treatment from girls. But then if you kind of expand your horizons and you meet different sorts of girls from different places with different class levels, etc., you'll get all these different experiences which will help open your mind as to what's possible and what you really like and dislike. So essentially you have to get lots of experiences to bring yourself out of the darkness of ignorance and come into the light of experience and knowledge by getting lots of chicks.
I just want to add on one little thing, which is to say that through that process, there's a lot of things that you think you want because you've learned that you should want them in women, and then you're going to find out when you actually date women that a lot of those things you've been told you should want, you totally don't want. So be open to discarding a lot of what you think is good and follow your heart.
Yeah, just to add something onto that, I mean, it's really useful to have a bunch of woke friends around you who can point out when you are going for things that maybe you don't really want, that are retarded. Because if you only have your own perspective, you only have your own perspective, and that's not usually that useful compared to having, say, 3 or 4 different perspectives, right? And some of the times it could be your friends are crazy and what they think is useless, but then that's good for you because you can use that as a sounding board, and you can go, oh, well, he's definitely nuts, and I really don't want these things he wants, so I should definitely not get those things from girls. So good and bad, I think having people to compare mindsets with is a very useful thing in this regard.
All right. Let's we have one more question from a reader.
Alrighty.
We actually talked about this before, but you can actually...
I have an idea. Please let me know whether or not it would seem publicly awkward. What if I walked around a busy place, such as the streets of a city or a shopping mall? Oh, there's some spelling mistakes here, so I'll just fix them. And I was wearing a t-shirt that asked the question, "Am I your type? Call me." I don't know what women would be looking at me with interest, so this question would be my way of finding out.
All right. Well... so the biggest problem with this is this idea that women could identify you as being what they want by looking at you. So we've already discussed this somewhat when we talked particularly about how women don't choose guys primarily based on looks, but the real issue here is this idea that you lack other value beyond your looks, and that a girl wouldn't like you for your personality. I mean, if girls didn't like me for my personality, I'd be fucked. That's for sure. And I'm a super short guy. I'm I don't know, 5'3" or 5'4", something like that, 163 centimeters, and I'm like 40 years old, and I guess theoretically, some people would say that being black was really positive for dating Asian girls. Other people would say that Asian girls hate black guys and there's no way. And, but the fact of the matter is most of the girls that I've dated have never dated a black guy. And most of them, a lot of them, especially in Japan and Korea, have never dated a foreigner at all. They have no interest in foreigners in particular. And so they wouldn't choose me out of a lineup. And believe me, I know that because all you have to do is get on Tinder and you can find out very quickly that you're not many women's type. So really the way to look at it isn't, and this is another question we had earlier today, which is about, how can you get women to come to you? And it's like, well, if you want girls that clearly are, way below your level, then it's no problem. But that's not what I want for myself. So putting on a shirt, it could be a funny shirt to say that, especially if it could be a funny shirt. I mean, I think that would be fun if we wore t-shirts like that and we went out and actually did approaches. Now then it would be fine. But if you were just sitting around hoping that girls are going to approach you, especially in Asia, that's not going to work. Now, it's possible that it can work with Western women. I was at a pool party with McConnell last weekend, and 3 white girls came over and started talking to us, which was really strange because I never get approached by girls. But I guess, they were like, oh, you guys look interesting. They thought we were gay. Or at least one of them thought we were gay. So, so there's that. So we got approached, but not apparently because they were interested in us. So that mindset and that attitude is just really not a good one for you. And the attitude you should have as a man is that you want certain things and then you go out and try and figure out how to get them. I mean, this is kind of the essence of manliness throughout all of human history. It's not you sit at home and you wait for things to come to you. That's like, that's just weak. And as it turns out, even in this day and age, girls are not particularly interested in weak.
Yeah, so one of the parts of this question was, would it be socially awkward? And I don't know, I mean, it might. It kind of depends on you and other people and all these other things. I guess the main point, though, is this. What are you trying to get out of it? If you're actually trying to get some girls out of it, I don't think it's a great method unless you don't have much in the way of standards, because most girls are going to look at this and be like, meh, it's not really risk-taking, it's not really interesting or exciting. They might be somewhat curious if you're standing out a bit, but generally it's just going to come across as kind of lame, I think. So if your goal is to get girls, I don't think it's a great thing to do. If your goal is to kind of like push your social edge so you can feel a bit of anxiety and maybe increase your comfort level somewhat, then yeah, I think give it a go. I mean, there's a similar sort of idea that I got one of my Chinese students to do once, where we got him to wear a t-shirt that had his WeChat QR code on it. Now, WeChat is like the Chinese version of WhatsApp, right? And when he wore this, he would go and approach girls, and then he would point to this funny phrase that we had on the front and the back of the t-shirt. And the front of the t-shirt said something like, "Give me a kiss," right? So he'd roll up to girls and he would like point this out, and then the girls would laugh because it's obviously a funny phrase. And then he would say, "Hey, scan my WeChat," and the WeChat was like on the arm of the t-shirt. So girls found this situation quite funny, and for him, he got like an insane amount of contact details from girls that day. Now, that doesn't mean all these girls banged him, but yeah, it was quite successful because it was like stimulating for them. So if you're able to do this in a way that is stimulating and interesting for girls, then sure. I mean, see what you can get out of it. I don't think it's going to replace good old-fashioned game in any way, though. And as Red Paul Q said, you really want to focus on getting girls by being manly rather than just trying to like trick your way into winning somehow, because any sort of wins you get by cheap tricks generally don't last.
All right. So that is all of the questions that we have for today. So why don't we... there is one more question. Why do people think Asian girls are easy?
Okay. So why do people think Asian girls are easy? Normally it's because they are banging trash. So essentially anytime you're going for girls that are either damaged people or 3-4 points below your value level, it should be easy, right? And it would be like if you're a professional level boxer and you go and fight some like 13-year-old who's it's his second time in the ring. I mean, you're just going to destroy him. So I think a lot of guys who think Asian girls are easy, they're not lying about something or incorrect. It's just that they're saying that that's their experience. Now, on a broader level, why do they have this issue? Well, partially it's because a lot of their exposure to Asian girls is girls back in the West, and girls back in the West are pretty much surrounded by lots and lots of different white guys and other foreign guys that they can just like make stuff happen with without having the same level of social pressure or social ostracization that they may have back in their countries. Now, why do I bring up the race thing? Well, it works like this. Asian beauty standards are very different from Western beauty standards. So there are a bunch of characteristics that Western people generally have that Asians find quite attractive. And one simple example of this would be big eyes. So if you're an average looking kind of Western dude of whatever sort, and let's just say average meaning you're like a 6, right, in terms of looks, to an Asian person, you're probably going to be 1 to 2, maybe even more points above that, simply because their beauty standards are different from the people, normal kind of beauty standards back home. So that means that it's easier to get girls of a certain attractiveness level than it would be with girls back home, theoretically. Now, the age-old test is this. I mean, fly to any East Asian country like Japan, Korea, China, and then look at what the local beauty standards are and define what an 8 looks like, right, in terms of looks. An 8, then just go and approach a whole bunch of them, either on the street or at social events or wherever, and see how easy they are. I guarantee you they won't be easy. You're not going to approach one and get one just like that, unless you are like really good looking. Generally, it's going to be you approaching a fairly large amount of them and not getting any of them for quite a while, simply because they have a lot better options.
Yeah, that point you brought up about how the beauty standards are different is so huge. As an example, most Western guys, when they come to Asia, they think that a lot of the girls are really attractive simply because they're all wearing makeup and dressed in heels and have their hair done and are significantly thinner. And they're just like, wow, these girls are amazing. They're so hot. I mean, I know because that's how I felt when I first got to Asia too. I was like, oh my God, these girls, they are so good. And, and then it took some time before I started to go, wait a minute. These girls aren't nearly as good as those girls, looking at the girls that are with the Asian guys.
Yeah.
And after a while, I realized that I wasn't really doing very well. I mean, after a while, it didn't take that long. But that's why guys think that Asian girls are easier. And I think there's another aspect, which is that because of the way Asian culture works, if a girl is interacting with a stranger, then that shows a high degree of interest on the girl's part. And especially, if a girl goes out with a stranger, again, one-on-one, I mean, that's a very high degree of interest. Because in Asia, it's not generally done that way, typically. And this varies somewhat from country to country, where, I'd say, for example, in Japan, it's more common for girls to go on a date with a random guy. In Korea, it's less common, and it's less common than in Japan, and more typically girls will go on blind dates that are set up by friends. And then in Chinese culture, where much more typically, I would say, and you can correct me if you disagree, but I would say that they tend to meet through their extended friend circle. Is that?
Yeah, I think it's accurate.
And so when an Asian girl meets a guy for a date who she met randomly and is a stranger, that indicates a much higher degree of interest than it does for a girl in the West meeting a guy one-on-one for drinks or whatever. That's just done all the time. Where like girls in the West will go and hang out at a guy's house. And, oh yeah, sure, we can just hang out at your house and watch, Game of Thrones, or I don't know, maybe whatever, something else. I don't know, whatever it is that Black Mirror or whatever. And that's seen as being normal. And so in the West, the line between dating and more than dating is very fuzzy. but in Asia it's not. So, in Asia, guys will be like, yeah, every girl I went on a date with, I had sex with. And it's like, well, yeah, because the girl wouldn't have gone on a date with you if she wasn't interested, whereas on a Western girl, they would do that all the time. They'd go, well, he seems kind of cool. Okay, I'll go out with him. It's not a big deal to go out with some guy. But in Asia, it is kind of a big deal. So there you go.
Another quick thing I'll add to this is that with girls in Asia who are going on dates with guys, compared to girls who are doing that in the West, girls in the West are going to generally offer some sort of challenge, right? And they're going to make it seem somewhat more difficult, potentially, than Asian girls. Whereas Asian girls just really want you to like them and get along with them and show you're going to stick around, and then they're usually quite down to bang. Now, this may not seem to be the case. I imagine you're all starting to yell now and going, wait a minute, but if you just get Western girls drunk, they just do sloppy sex with you. And yes, that does seem to be pretty accurate. But the main thing being, there are lots of Asian girls that don't have much experience, and when they meet a foreigner, for them it's a lot more exciting. So they're a lot more attracted than they would normally feel with most of the normal guys they're meeting, because the foreign person is exotic and interesting. The same thing for us in reverse when we meet some Persian girl, right? So anyway, they meet this foreigner and they're excited. That makes them not be able to think as clearly and not make as probably well thought out decisions. So then they get really excited and they tell themselves, oh, I think I'm falling in love with this person after even 1 or 2 dates. And then they bang the guy thinking that it's all going to work out, because if he was a local Asian guy, it's very likely the Asian guy would just become the boyfriend and things would play out in whatever romantic fantasy the girl has built up in her head. But foreign culture being quite different, generally the foreign guy goes, well, that was really easy, and they just look down on the girl for that behavior, and then they move on to the next one. So that's just an important point I thought I would throw out there to finish off this question.
Awesome. Okay, well, I think that'll do it for this episode of the Asia Hang Suite, coming to you from Shanghai. And so that'll do.
Right, well, thanks for listening to this call today, guys. I hope you have learnt a lot and got a lot out of the answers we've given to your questions.
And hopefully a few laughs as well.
Yeah.
All right, see ya. Bye-bye.